Okay, and we're live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Albert, CEO of Bitcoin Startup Lab. Welcome to the Who's Who and a Founder's Journey into Bitcoin interview series, where we have found 30 of the top innovators on Bitcoin in 2023. The Bitcoin community has come together to celebrate innovative and significant achievements on Bitcoin so that we reinforce and grow the innovation culture on Bitcoin. Significant achievements on Bitcoin are things that were done for the very first time ever, or breaking or setting a new record to push forward the innovation frontier of Bitcoin. This show is brought to you by Bitcoin Startup Lab, a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin ecosystem. We help you turn your idea into an investment-ready startup on Bitcoin. And CryptoSlate, a crypto-agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And a big thank you to all of our teams and the guest speakers that have come together to make this show possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. Today, our special guest is Yago. He is a co-creator of Sovereign, which has become the largest DeFi on Bitcoin by TVL. Welcome, Yago. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks for, you're about to share your origin story, and this is a noble cause because, as you know, by sharing your origin story, you're going to be able to, we're going to attract more builders into Bitcoin, right? And then we can fulfill creating a sustainable Bitcoin economy together. So thank you again. Thank you for taking time out today.
Well, anything to build more on Bitcoin and have more builders building it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, today we have, definitely everyone wants to know how you and your team created the biggest DeFi by TVL on Bitcoin, right? But before we get to that juicy part, before we talk about how people can get involved with that project, let's start from the top. I mean, even before your first startup, or before you became a founder, what were some of, can you share with us your origin story, especially any aspect during your childhood or university time where you had side hustles, or like the early signs of the innovative spirit was coming out? I always get a chuckle from that. So what was that first? Can you remember the first one? Like, even if it was like selling lemonade on the street or something, it could be anything, like something basic like that. That's what we're looking for.
Well, I think probably my first business was because of a girl. When I was about 15 or 16, there was a girl I really liked. And I wanted to take her away to like a weekend in a beach town. And I'm 16 or 15, I don't remember, but I don't have any cash. So at the time, I had been competing on the national debate team. And I'd managed to rack up some wins, and I was trying to figure out. So this was in Israel, right? So I decided to start a summer school where I would teach kids English and use my credentials as a way to do that. And the reason I decided to do it as a summer school was because I felt like I could scale much more rather than just doing one-on-one tutoring. And the way I decided to do it was there was like about an hour and a half bus ride from me, a very wealthy neighborhood. So I printed a whole bunch of posters, get your kids to learn English from the debate champion, and and put them all over that town, and had a 1 week sort of English intensive that I taught to kids who were just barely younger than me. Wow. And first of all, I made a lot of money, at least in a 16-year-old's perspective. I had enough money to take her, and we got a hotel room and everything. But that also ended up turning into a business, and I ended up having running summer schools and hiring people and
wow.
Yeah.
So. In the name of love and romance.
Yeah.
Well, that's a powerful motivator. That's a great story. And I mean, how did you, I guess at age 15, 16, all right, so love is a powerful motivator, right? But I would say maybe a lot of people wouldn't know where to start. Like where did the inspiration come from? Like you could have started anywhere, but you had the foresight that I'm gonna go to the most wealthy neighborhood.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
like
Well,
to come
I
up with
think,
that idea, that's cool.
I mean, I suppose in many ways what we do isn't so difficult, right? I mean, what was I like? What did I do? I came up with some branding and a differentiator. I figured out how to scale like a
Yeah.
business.
Instead of doing one-on-one, you did classes. Yeah.
And I figured out where I could have like a niche target audience with high margins. Now, I wouldn't have put it in any of those terms today.
Yeah.
Sorry, at the time, but basically that's what I was doing. So, but
Mm.
it was just like I was desperate and greedy, and I didn't have a lot of time, and I was horny. So I moved my ass.
All right, great. I think a lot of people are motivated by those things. Maybe not, they're probably not as forthcoming as you are, right? But it's definitely a huge motivator when there's somebody you love or for romance. That I could definitely relate to that. Absolutely. So so the first time, I'm just curious, how long when you're passing out flyers over the neighborhood, how long did that take? Like, how long did it take you to put together one cohort of like?
It wasn't a big cohort. I think I had 6 or 8 kids
Mhm.
who got registered. I must have spent, look, the big part was like, it was like an hour and a half or like 2 hour bus ride there and 2 hour bus ride back when you wait, like, but when you're a teenager, you got nothing but time, right?
Yeah.
So I spent a day doing it, and I put my phone number there. This was like before anyone had email,
Right.
basically. And they would call me, and I would write down. And I contacted so it was during the summer, right? So I phoned the schools up, and I said, can I rent? I don't even know if I rented. I may have gotten the rooms for free because it was like
Yeah.
empty, and I was doing an education or something, and the schools were empty anyway. So I just tried to put together the pieces. And the advantage was starting small, right? Like, what is the number one rule, right? Start
Yes.
with things, do things that don't scale. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I was doing. And then later I managed to turn that into a system,
Mhm.
right? And sort of reproduce it and industrialize it. But the first one, there wasn't a big plan. It was just wanted some money.
Yeah, no, I love that. And there was like some time pressure, right? Because you said it was during the summertime, so like
Yeah.
you had to take her out before the summer was over. Like so there's like
Yeah.
time pressure, which is great for reaching goals, right? Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. I'm just curious, how much do you charge them, for 1 week?
I
Yeah.
honestly don't know. I mean, this was a while ago, but it was enough for me to go down for like a weekend, get a hotel rooms, take her out to dinners,
Yeah.
and have a little bit left over. So in teenage terms, I was a millionaire.
Right, exactly. That's the life back in the teenage. And how long did you run this business for?
I ran it all through so high school.
Mm.
I would not go to my high school, and instead go to other high schools and sort of organize classes there. Uh, and then when I was in the military, I had people running it for me, and then I ran it all the way through it put me through university.
Oh wow. So it got to a scale where you could pay for your own university.
Yeah, but it's also not an American university. This is
Yeah.
and it was cheaper.
But still though, nonetheless, I mean you got to a point where people are running it for you. So this is your first business. You didn't try anything else before that.
Yeah, maybe cocky.
Wow.
I've had to fail several times since to become more modest.
All right. So yeah, no, I can relate that too. So tell me what happened. So, all right, first business, great cash flow, right? And you even made enough to hire people. So you could do other things while your business is running. That's sort of like a dream of every entrepreneur, right? So you don't have to work so much. But okay, and then so what happened at this? You graduate university and you're like, yeah, I'm awesome. And what was the next thing you started and what happened? I think
This
it's
The next probably big thing that I started wasn't a business. It was a street art collective. And we used to organize raves and street art events and sort of like weird cultural events, and we became pretty big. And the biggest thing that we ended up doing is a massive water fight every summer. So I had this idea that it was really hot in the summer. I was again on a bus, and I was driving through this huge, driving past the biggest square in the city, where there was a big water fountain, and I had this vision in my mind of thousands of people running around, squirting water at each other, cooling off, and we created an email, like a little video that can send around through email, because this was like before YouTube. So the way viral stuff got sent around was you would literally like send the video to your friends. We created this like trailer for this event, and thousands of people showed up. We didn't know what would happen. We just like went there, thousands of people showed up, and then it happened every single summer and became a tradition.
So it's like the opposite of Burning Man with water, sort of.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So I'd like to learn a little bit. So you're driving, you're in a bus, and you went by the big town square and a bunch of people in the water fountain, and you had this vision. I mean, most people, when they have like a daydream or something, they just like, all right, cool idea, and that was it. But like, what compelled you to actually take action, make that video, send it to your friends, etc.?
I think that entrepreneurship is a disease. It's like a form of mental illness. It's a compulsion, like OCD. You just can't help yourself. And it very often makes you unemployable. And it makes you obsessive. And I think often makes you unhappy. But it affects different people in different ways. The way it impacts me is I see things in the world which I think could be better. And every so often, one of them strikes me as one which I could fix. And I try, and I have a compulsion to try. So it's nothing so glorious as a heroic choice. It's more like a compulsion, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. I think, yeah, it is a compulsion, right? So that's a very modest way to put it. But yeah, it's just almost like part of your nature. No, thanks for sharing. So okay, so far so good. You're batting 2 for 2 right now, right? And then
what's the game? What do I win?
You're winning. Yeah, maybe you don't like winning anything. I mean, I guess it's sort of like you're batting 2 for 2, so you have it's sort of like you visualize something and you bring it to fruition, right? So I can see how you're becoming very confident, right? So what's the third one? So what's the third thing?
Well, maybe I should talk about a failure that I had. I started a company called Enzium, and Enzium was actually because of Enzium that I discovered Bitcoin. But what Enzium was an effort to. So I'd studied neuroscience, and part of what I'd done was machine learning, and I wanted to take the idea of machine learning and new enzymatic enzymes are they're like proteins that exist in the body that activate other proteins. And my idea was, let's use this to fingerprint enzymatic activity so that we can thin slice diagnostics and identify what medications will work for different disease states. And specifically, I was focused on bowel diseases. And the reason for that was my grandfather died of bowel cancer. And the problem with that particular cancer, but also many others and many diseases, is that you'll go to the doctor and they'll give you something and you're non-responsive, and they'll give you something else and you're non-responsive, and they'll give you something else, and they'll go through, a whole slew of different medications until hopefully they find one that works. But sometimes it's too late. And the reason is that symptoms of a disease can look identical, but the underlying cause can be different. And if you could figure out what the actual biological, the enzymatic activity was, you would be able to much more quickly and possibly immediately be able to match the diagnostic to the correct medication.
All right, so it's like a quick and accurate diagnostic method for bowel disease.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So this was something I worked on while I was doing my master's, and it failed in a lot of ways. But one of the classic ways that it failed was we were something of a solution in search of a problem. We didn't have a clear way in which we were going to be able to develop this. We didn't have like a specific diagnostic or a specific therapy that we were developing this to. We were developing a general purpose thing, and we were looking for who could take this and turn this into an actual product, who could productize this, right?
Okay.
So that's like a classic entrepreneurial mistake, right? You're a solution in search of a problem. That's almost always going to fail.
Right.
And we had other issues. We had trouble raising funds. I think we always gave explanations that were much too complicated. We didn't manage to thin slice what we were doing, partly because we weren't focused enough ourselves. And we also had some founder issues. And so ultimately that company actually still exists, but it sort of turned into one of my co-founders lifestyle projects and never really went anywhere.
Okay.
But because I was reading papers in network science at the time, I came across the Satoshi white paper, and actually at the time I didn't even before I knew that Enzyme probably wasn't going to work out, I probably was already losing steam on Enzyme because I had been bitten by this much bigger bug, BTC.
Wow. Okay. So before we jump into this Bitcoin thing, right, where the story starts getting exciting, I'm just curious. I've also made the mistake of running some small successful business in the beginning and just very, very focused on the user. But then I got a little older and then a little bit more powerful in the sense that, my reach became further and I could do bigger things. And I also fell into that trap of creating as he says, in my terms, like you're creating a product, but you haven't lined up your customers yet. Okay. Right. I haven't really thought about it, but almost like in that sense, I went backwards. Like in a sense, you're going backwards in terms of entrepreneurship. But what caused you to do it differently this time? Especially if you had like successful muscle memory doing it the other way, right? I find that this is like a really interesting thing to think about.
I think that it's very easy to fall in love with the technology and think that actually business, especially tech businesses, are about bringing new technologies and that the technology matters. Actually, honestly, this is a huge lesson for the entire crypto space and all right. So this entire crypto, like if you think about it, like Bitcoin came out, right?
Uh-huh.
And we still talk about it like it's a technological revolution, but who gives a fuck about it's crap technology. It's the worst. It's so slow, it doesn't do anything, right? It's like literally the worst technology. But because but it's super successful, right?
Yeah.
But because we think in terms of technology, and 20 years of VC propaganda has told us that we should be going out and building technologies, and these are tech companies and blah blah blah. If you look at everything that has come out after Bitcoin, it's like all about the razzle dazzle of technology. We're going to be privacy focused, or we're going to have smart contracts, or we're going to be faster, we're going to have greater throughput, or and it's like, oh, technology, 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 technology. But this is not about it's not about technology. It's
No.
about right. Bitcoin is a revolution. It's not a technological revolution. It's a revolution in money and in property rights, right? And that's what attracts people to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's very easy to fall in love with the next shiny new toy, and it also gives you a feeling like you're on the cutting edge, you're super clever, something that other people don't know. So it's very seductive.
Yeah, no, I like that explanation. I mean, because the news and like you say, VCs, they glamorize these new inventions. And actually they should have a report card, all the ones that they glamorize, like how many of them actually like made something useful. I think if
Yeah.
people saw
What's your Weissman score? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
then people would probably become more realistic about these things.
Yeah.
But only see the like you say, like the bells and whistles, the shining part of it, right? Yeah, no, that's a great point. And then so let's jump into this now. So you've had successes and some failures, and uh had some fun with your entrepreneurship journey, and then you read this white paper, right, by Satoshi, and you got bitten by the bug. Like how did you? I think some people write it off the first time. Like I know I wrote it off the first time, but like what clicked for you? I'm just curious. Like what, if you could recall, like what was the thing that you, because it sounds like this is around the time that Bitcoin was launched. Am I correct?
Yeah. This
Yeah,
was 2011. I was late.
it's like really early.
Well, everyone thinks they're late. It doesn't matter when they come. But
What is that? 3 years in, or 2.5 years in?
it was 2009, so it was 2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I probably yeah. So for me it clicked immediately. I'd basically, without knowing it, been waiting my entire life for Bitcoin. When I was a kid, I grew up in stories of how my family had survived the concentration camps in Poland. I grew up in a family that was some of them were forced to flee South Africa because they had been fighting the apartheid government. I'd seen my family have money confiscated. I'd seen inflation. I myself had smuggled gold out of the country as a young kid to get money to my family. And it was very, very clear to me that financial, monetary freedom was the only freedom that mattered. Because it was the basis of everything else. Because if you can pay, you can find someone to hide you under the rafters. If you can pay, you can get yourself across the border. If you can pay, you can, schmooze and network with powerful people. If you can pay, if you can control your financial destiny, then you have the means of protecting yourself and your family members. Which is exactly the reason that authoritarian governments, the first thing they go after is the money supply and capital controls, right? Whenever a war starts, gold standards out the window, fiat, you're not allowed to move your kind of money out of the country anymore. If you have gold, you have to deposit it, with the Federal Reserve. We're going to seize your bank accounts every single time.
Yeah.
Because that is, that is the power in the modern, more than just the modern world, but that's how we have money is a representation of social power. And so the way people take away social power is they take away your control over your money. So I was totally primed for that. And beyond that, I'd been thinking a lot. I've always been a bit of a futurist, and I've been thinking a lot about the internet. And I always thought that the internet had a fundamental flaw, which is that it had no property rights. So we have this new frontier, like the new West, 20th century technology, right? The most cutting edge. And we've paired it with the cultural and governance sophistication of 2,500 BC, right? We have pharaohs in Egypt controlled the flow of the Nile. They decided when people could harvest, and they owned everything that they created. And now we have Mark Zuckerberg, who controls the flow of data on Facebook, and we have the pharaoh in Amazon who controls the Amazon flow, and the pharaoh at Google who controls the Google flow. And you have a few pharaohs. They control the servers, they control the information flow, and they own everything you produce. And this is no way to create an economy. And so if you look at the Web 2 economy, it's basically all advertising. Nothing is being created there. And then you look at what's happened since Bitcoin, since the introduction of cryptographic property. Suddenly we have vibrant ecosystems of economic activity that are actually growing. So, you know, the private property is such a fundamental idea to the ability for people to be incentivized to create and to grow and to transact freely. The fact that the internet didn't have it meant that the internet was doomed, like categorically doomed, never to achieve its utopian or anything near its utopian expected results. It was, and I'd expected this, you know, sort of just through first principles thinking, I'd expected the internet to go terribly wrong, and it had. And when I read about a digital commodity, I thought, here, like, it struck me like a lightning bolt. Like, this is it. This is the solution.
All right, so that's exciting to me. That's exciting to me. I mean, I could see how this is leading up to sovereign. But before we get into that, when you said it got struck, it like struck you like a lightning bolt, was this during you reading the white paper, or after like you read it and you were like thinking about it and then boom?
There was I didn't even understand it, a bunch of the white paper. By the time I got to the last third of the white paper, I was lost. But I after that I got really interested in cryptography, you know, and I managed to get to a point where I could understand the rest of it. But it was, the assumption was that what was being described from a game theoretic perspective could work. And I thought I could improve it. You know, it's like there used to be this old meme. Hello, I've just discovered Bitcoin and I'm here to fix it, right? I was one of those too. But the basic concept of a digital commodity and a decentralized system for the management and transfer and security of all forms of permissions, right? Basically, like access controls, property rights, they're all the same thing. This was undeniable.
Yeah, super. So I'm just curious, how did you try to fix Bitcoin?
Well, for me, the biggest problem with Bitcoin was privacy, right? It was obvious even back then to anyone who was giving it some thought that pseudonymous transaction chains would very easily become you know, exposed. They would tie people's identities to transactions, and the risk of having all of your transactional activity exposed is a huge risk. It is an invitation to tyranny. So I spent some time working on schemes, and I tried to convince other, I convinced cryptographers that my schemes made sense, and And then I wanted to create a blockchain to build it out. And I managed to get some really smart people working on it. But ultimately, like many other efforts, at the time that thought they could improve in Bitcoin, it was very clear that what we thought initially would be doable or even easy was not doable. And so, in a way, that was another failure. There was also this other thing that was more or less the time. This was around 2012, 2013. It was more or less the time that people started introducing alt chains, right? And I wanted to do the same. But as I spent more and more time looking into Bitcoin and trying to construct a different system which would be without trade-offs better and failing, a couple of things happened. First of all, I decided I didn't want to launch something which I thought would not work. And second of all, I became more and more Bitcoin as the chain, rather than just as an abstract concept of digital commodity, became more and more precious to me, and I wanted to spend more time building and protecting it.
Okay, so there's a lot of things worth talking about right now. Like I'm really curious about. Let's go in order, right? So, like I guess the last thing you mentioned was, like during this time of the deep dive into trying to fix Bitcoin, I'm guessing you start understanding it like really more deeply, right? And then like a new beauty emerged. You're like maybe another the way you saw it, the perception changed, right? But before we get to that, we were talking about something really important, and that's privacy, right? So when you say privacy, there's a rainbow of this going on, right? Like individual privacy. Yeah, if all of our transactions are transparent, that is an invitation tyranny. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have large companies that like they technically have gone public, so they're supposed to release their information in a transparent manner, right? It'd be interesting to think. I mean, where do you like? This is going off a little tangent, but I think it's sort of interesting because when we get to sovereign, I think sovereign is definitely taking us closer to that future. How long will it take for like an entire company to run its entire financials on Bitcoin, like exchanging in Bitcoin? Like, I mean, we can use stable coins and stuff like that, but it's basically everything's stored on chain.
Yeah, I don't really think we're that close to that. And the reason is that Bitcoin as commodity money is it's like the raw ingredients for a different monetary system, but it's not baked, right? So a commodity money is always going to experience the volatility that is associated with commodities. And even very, very large commodities, right, are extremely volatile, right? We talk about the petrodollar, but think about, right, actual petroleum prices, right? They over the last 5 years, they've been $110 and they've been $20. So the dollar is backed in a way by petroleum, right? But it isn't units of petroleum. So for us to see Bitcoin adopted not just as a commodity money, but as a currency, right? Something which is used in day-to-day transactional activity, we need to provide a way for users to have access to it without that volatility. And the way that we do that is with Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. My view is that of all of the different applications for Bitcoin that we could be building right now, the single most important one by far, like it's number 1, 2, and 3 in the priority list, is Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. That is how regular people, regular institutions, regular companies, and regular governments like El Salvador, right? El Salvador are dollarized. They could easily be on the Bitcoin dollar. We just don't have a Bitcoin dollar at scale yet. So that's challenge number 1.
Well, so no, that's incredible, actually. this is one of the main juicy topics I want to talk about, right? Because you guys recently launched your Bitcoin backed stablecoin, correct? As sovereign.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've done instead of launching a single Bitcoin-backed stablecoin is we've created a protocol called the Sovereign Mint, and the Sovereign Mint is designed to aggregate different Bitcoin-backed sort of stable assets, right? And aggregate them into a single currency. And the reason is, if you look at sort of like the Ethereum world, there's, I don't know, 1,000 different stable coins. There's lots of different big ones. It breaks fungibility. It makes it less easy to use them as a single currency. But worst of all, it introduces very concentrated systemic risk on each of these assets. If Tether goes down, TUSD goes down. If there's problems with the interest rate of MakerDAO, DAI goes down, etc. Right? And so what you really want is you want to have multiple different ways of generating stability, and you want to mix them together to create a system which is more robust and more robust under many, many different types of market circumstances, and is able to more tightly sort of average any fluctuation of any specific methodology. And so right now, the Mint aggregates two different Bitcoin-backed stable assets. One is called ZUSD, created by the Zero system, and the other is called DOC, created by Money on Chain. Both of them use Bitcoin, back Bitcoin to create dollars, and both of them do it in totally different ways, which allows the system to be more robust.
I get it. So like when one is going up, the other one might be going down to average out the price.
Right. Or if there's a lot of demand, one of them can respond quickly. But if there's a drop in demand, another one can be redeemed more quickly. Or, one of them relies on interest rates and so does well in a high interest rate environment. And one of them relies on originations and so can do well in a low interest rate environment. So you actually want to have the system dynamically be able to modulate multiple different methods. I call this the mirror image of MakerDAO. If anyone's familiar with MakerDAO, MakerDAO is one method, right? You come in, you put in an asset, you take a loan out of that asset, and you pay interest. It's one smart contract with one single method of creating stability, but many, many different asset types, mostly stable coins. USDC goes in there and some other things. And then ETH goes in there, and LETH goes in there, and then also sort of more recently sort of they created like they've sold the rights to banks to provide their capital, which I think is introducing all kinds of fragilities into the system, because it's one method with many, many different kinds of collateral, all of varying quality. We have one type of collateral, Bitcoin, and many, many different methods, and a marketplace of methods of ensuring stability.
No, that sounds very promising. Yeah, and I could see that might even be like a startup idea, right? Because you have two right now making this Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, but then you would need a few more.
Many more, and we have no shortage of ideas. If you want to help make Bitcoin successful and at the same time tackle probably the biggest market opportunity, my view is that you can be at one of two ends. Now, there's all kinds of things that you could do at these ends. You can do UI, you can do smart contract development, you can create applications, but there are basically two ends. One is creating these methods of stabilities that can plug into the mint, right, the Bitcoin mint. And the other is taking Bitcoin-backed stablecoins and introducing them into different use cases, finding niche markets that could really benefit, that are going to be like the early adopters of Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. I think those are the two big opportunities.
Wow. Okay. No, for sure. We'll get the word out on the hackathon, and we can make some advertisements to recruit for the next cohort, right? if they hit a certain milestone, they get like 20 minutes with you to talk about this, to pitch the idea or something. Right. I think we could definitely help out there. But before we get too far into the sovereign realm, can you like, let's backtrack a little bit. So you created this privacy company 2013, 2014.
It never became a company. It was just a bunch of people working on an alternative blockchain implementation.
Right. And then at the end, you sort of, your perspective of Bitcoin chain, right, changed. Like some people might have gotten maybe frustrated with Bitcoin, like Vitalik, and he created Ethereum, right? But then instead of creating an altcoin, you went and you went further down the rabbit hole. Like, what was that change perspective? Like that's a pretty big choice, especially when the whole market's like, like there's a whole craze, like, coming up in 2016, 17, right, of altcoins. And so how were you, did you jump into that craze, or did you just keep going with Bitcoin?
No, I never participated really in any of that, because I thought it was nonsense. I think I was right in basically every single case, with the exception of Ethereum, where and the reason it was nonsense is because we didn't need a huge number of chains, and we didn't need a huge number of coins, and most sort of fundamentally, this was never about bells and whistles. It was never about the technology. It was about property rights. And the most problematic thing that I was seeing is it felt to me that all of these projects had fundamentally misunderstood what we were doing and what was going on. They were building systems which provided less secure property rights to users. And we're making all kinds of sacrifices for so-called feature improvements, and then introducing new frictions by introducing new commodity coins. And my view is that basically this endeavor was doomed to failure. And, over the long arc of time, I think that has proven to be the case in most situations.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more evident as time goes on in the Bitcoin Renaissance.
Yes and no. So my view has somewhat changed.
Okay.
And the reason it's changed is because the way that Bitcoin is behaving, and in particular the way the Bitcoin community is behaving, has changed. Until around 2017, I think that I would have been able to say that that was my view without any qualifications. But over the last 5 years, we've seen Bitcoin, not the chain, right? Not the technology, but Bitcoin, the culture, ossify. It used to be the case that we would say, this was like one of the biggest memes in Bitcoin, anything useful that is developed will simply be adopted by Bitcoin. And today, we do not see that happening. Now, you mentioned the Bitcoin Renaissance. I think we're at an extremely critical moment, because Bitcoin could become this detached commodity. And what do I mean by a detached commodity? I mean a commodity which has no interaction with the real economy. An example of a detached economy is gold, right? We could literally become digital gold. Gold has very little relationship with the actual economy, as opposed to the way it used to be, right? Gold used to be fundamental to the real economy, and today is, a relic. And the reason that might happen with Bitcoin is because today you cannot trustlessly do anything outside of a very narrow sort of pre-coded things with Bitcoin without using an intermediary. And so that substantially limits what you can do with BTC. And so I sometimes say it's easy to build on Bitcoin, but it's nearly impossible to build on BTC. And that is, I think, what we need to change.
Okay, so I agree with you. I mean, I think it's a little bit more severe than that. I'm pretty new to Bitcoin. My brother in 2010 was, hey, buy some of this, right? He's much smarter than me. And I said it was a scam. Many years later, I had to eat my words. Okay, so I'm new to Bitcoin. Like it's been 2 years, okay, for me. It's always been on the peripheral. Like a lot of friends innovate on Bitcoin and other stuff, or not so much on Bitcoin, but in the Web3 world, crypto world. But always on peripheral. And I didn't really do a deep dive until about 2 years ago, and then I started looking at the data, right? And so every time there was a crypto winter or a crash or the cycle, compared to the altcoins, Bitcoin, the percentage it drops is less than the altcoins, and definitely less than Ethereum. If you, let's just say that's the second strongest. But what happened last year, at the end of the year, Bitcoin actually dropped percentage-wise more than Ethereum. Okay, so in a sense, to me, that's a very strong early indicator that people don't really think is that strong of a store value because it is siloed, right? Because gold can be siloed, it's fine, but our computer chips, our medical technologies, modern society is built from the element of gold. If we took gold out of that, we'd be back in the Stone Ages, basically, right? So Bitcoin doesn't have those properties yet, right? We haven't designed those utilities into and integrated those things into our culture and into our society. So, if there wasn't these new things going on in Bitcoin, I mean, I would even say like, hey, maybe this is the beginning to end, right?
Well, I think, possibly. I think it is a potential risk to Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will always have a very, very important niche to play, even as a detached commodity. It, unlike anything else, because everything else has made very significant sacrifices in terms of property rights, reliability. I call Bitcoin the only permaware. What is permaware? It's not software, which changes all the time, and it's not hardware, which is physical. It's like an instantiation of hardware into the digital realm, into software, right? It's software that doesn't change. And that is a remarkable thing. There is nothing like it. And so there's some significant chunk of value for that, but it's a fraction of the value that Bitcoin can have. It's a fraction of the impact that Bitcoin could potentially have. And its ability to change the very fabric of the world that we live in to be more like a Bitcoin world is substantially diminished if it's not able to properly interact with and act as the foundations for the construction of that kind of world. And that's sort of like the optimistic side. On the less optimistic side, there is a competitive environment for narrative. There's a competitive environment for cryptographic assets. There's a competitive environment for digital commodities. And those digital commodities, for example, like Ethereum, that build vibrant economies, attract mindshare, attract entrepreneurship, attract the kinds of things that allow even the imperfect to overcome the stagnant.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for sharing that spectrum. So we're definitely here to, I really like that word, permaware, right? Because it's almost like it's an anchor in a world of chaos. And if it's an anchor, then you can trust it and you can
exactly.
But the key is you have to be able to build and link to it, right? So what is that? And then because we're talking about, we're leading up to sovereign. Like what year is this? Are we talking about when you have like this new view or new perception of Bitcoin? Like, I mean, I know it's evolving, but like
I started getting frustrated about sort of like the altcoin space very early, but I started getting frustrated with Bitcoin around 2017. I think I started to get concerned about. I actually can pinpoint the exact moment. I think Thamos, who was the admin moderator of the Bitcoin subreddit, banned conversation about big blocks. Now, I wasn't a big blocker and I had been persuaded that that keeping blocks small was the right way to go. But the fact that in the biggest forum for conversation about an asset which depends on adversarial thinking, they had banned conversation on the biggest debate in the space.
Wow.
That was
Isn't
a
that like against
huge.
the ethos of Bitcoin though?
I thought it was. I still think that Thamos is one of the people who caused the most damage to Bitcoin in the world, and I think that that was a terrible moment, and was the beginning of the sort of toxic culture that developed in Bitcoin.
What's stopping us from Yago, what's stopping us from creating one of like permissionless, like open conversation, debate, and innovation? Couldn't we just do this now?
We're doing it now, but there are Schelling points, right? And you know what? There's different answers I could give here, but I'll give what I think is a very significant answer. I think that there is what we've been talking about. It's a bit disconcerting, right? Nobody wants to say, well, yeah, here are the ways that Bitcoin could fail. In fact, the message that you always hear is Bitcoin is inevitable. Bitcoin is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
So that is the kind of thing which people who are into Bitcoin want to hear.
Yeah.
And the people who say it most and say it loudest tend to build audiences around them. And because criticism of Bitcoin initially was usually from people who didn't understand Bitcoin and were trying to promote their own shitcoin, it has now become the case that criticism of Bitcoin is considered the same as shitcoinery, which is considered the same as heresy, which is considered the same as traitorism. And so we in a way culturally, not entirely, but Bitcoin culture to a great extent, I'm sad to say, has become insecure.
Yeah.
Insecure. And the way you deal with insecurity is you say, I don't want to hear this. Those are heretics. Those are traitors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like there's like a mass psychology, like this sort of like degenerate down to like insecurity.
Yeah. It's not good enough to say we're the best. We also have to be inevitable. And the reason for that is because some people are worried that maybe we're not the best.
Yeah.
And I think they don't understand what makes Bitcoin the best in the same way that a shitcoiner doesn't understand what makes Bitcoin the best. They actually believe the Ethereum stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like to go back to first principles and fundamentals. It's just the only way to future proof something is we have to fight for it. And number two is just stay innovative, right? That's, I mean, the one constant in the universe is change. So that, I mean, any culture that wants to stay on top has to make that part of its culture. So, yeah, maybe we can band together, because the Bitcoin Startup Lab is definitely about that innovation, and more open-minded exploration, right? Like,
yeah, definitely. I've noticed that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're trying, and to be noticed, it feels good. So all right, so this is 2017, and is this when you started Sovereign, or were there like previous attempts to create Sovereign? Like can we ramp up to Sovereign? Because I want to, I'm sure a lot of people are going to rewatch this video and they want to know like the origin story of Sovereign and how to get involved. So let's ramp up now. Let's ramp up to you making Sovereign 2017 to today. Yeah.
Well, I didn't start Sovereign myself, and Sovereign didn't start in 2017. What happened was actually the pandemic, 2020. When the pandemic happened, a bunch of us Bitcoiners decided we wanted to create like a decentralized network of 3D mask printing, so that we could get masks to wherever they were needed, despite the fact that there was a global breakdown in supply and in trade networks. And to fund this effort, we wanted to be able to take donations in Bitcoin, and ideally we wanted to be able to provide people with an NFT. And so we were trying to figure out what would be the best way for us to sort of give people a Bitcoin NFT. And we ultimately decided that there was a technology that we really liked called Rootstock. And Rootstock was a Bitcoin sidechain. And so we built this project. We called it I think we called it Block 21. And we, the group that created it, we called ourselves the Distributed Collective. And if you actually go to Sovereign's GitHub, there is no Sovereign GitHub. There's a Distributed Collective GitHub, because Sovereign came out of the Distributed Collective, right? So several months later, some of the developers showed us and showed me a prototype that they've built of a decentralized exchange built on Bitcoin using Rootstock. And I got very, very excited.
Let's take a pause. So you created, you and some friends created Block 21, and then there's a community that evolved from there, and like a sub community within a community created like the beginnings of.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. All right. So what comes next? So they showed this to you.
Yeah. So I basically wrote a grant, gave a personal grant, so that a couple of devs would be able to start working on this full time. And I got very excited by it because for a lot of reasons, it was definitely something I wanted to use myself. I always felt like the fact that we were reliant on centralized exchanges to use Bitcoin was absurd. I try to not go near those things. And I also saw an opportunity to use this to do all kinds of other things, like lending, stable coins, and all kinds of dreams that I had for Bitcoin. And so that became the Distributed Collective DAO, and ended up being 30 or 40 members in the DAO. And then we were all just people who were unique, I suppose, from a Bitcoin perspective, because while we were all into Bitcoin, we some of us had come to Bitcoin from Ethereum. Some of us had used other systems. All of us were curious about them, and we didn't have the sort of enforced ignorance that had become so prevalent around us. And so we decided to go for it. And Aurora, one of the developers, really the leading developer at the time, she wrote a manifesto called a Sovereign Bitcoiners Manifesto, which she published on Bitcoin Talk, basically saying, we've always said that Bitcoin's going to be the apex predator. Well, let's go out there. We've always said that Bitcoin is going to adopt anything that is going to be useful to it. Let's go out there. Let's adopt the superpowers of everyone else, bring them in, and let's make sure that Bitcoin is indeed, the forefront of innovation and excitement and adventure. And let's make sure that we can become more and more sovereign with Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin itself can become more and more sovereign. And so that was the end of 2020. And then soon after, the Distributed Collective DAO voted to launch Sovereign and disband the Distributed Collective DAO, and Distributed Collective basically became Sovereign.
Wow.
And that was early 2021. And
wow.
yeah, and then it sort of kind of exploded.
Okay, so for people just jump in right now, Sovereign is the largest DeFi in Bitcoin by TVL. Last time I checked, I mean, it's around $50 million.
I think about
Right.
50 million. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's I think it's not just the largest. I think it's larger than all of the rest combined.
yeah, because I wanted to say like maybe like the second runner up is like 10 million, right? One fifth of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so it's weird. Like, like if you think about like projects that are building in the Bitcoin space, like people will talk about Blockstream and they'll talk about Stacks and they'll talk about but and probably Stack sort of is the best known. But what's weird is that Sovereign alone has more value in it than Stacks in terms of sort of TVL. So and has done far more trades and far more loans, done over $2 billion in trades, half a billion dollars in lending,
wow.
issued stable coins. Um,
2 billion. That's becoming like sizable.
yeah.
Yeah.
So many billions of dollars have been managed, and people are managing their flows through Sovereign. It's not without challenges. Sovereign is a very unique project, and maybe I'll let you ask your questions, but there's a lot to talk about Sovereign.
Yeah, no, I've been sort of picking up keywords, right? In the beginning, you started with lending, right? There was if I understand correctly, there's like a zero interest loan there, right? And then now you guys just launched the Bitcoin backed stablecoin. I mean, these are the beginnings of the pillars, and then you have obviously an exchange, so a DEX, a lending, and a stablecoin. Like
Yeah.
through my research, I noticed that these three things are precursor of a fully blown decentralized ecosystem, right? And it seems like you guys have all three of these now. So it must be like awesome to build on Sovereign, right? Because you have all these tools at your fingertips. And it's also like the beginnings of a decentralized banking system too. It's almost
That's
like
right.
you like a lot of banks say, oh, this is the people's bank, but it's not really the people's bank. It's still like, like, right. But this is actually the people's bank, right? It could definitely grow to that. I mean, it could eventually become like an alternative to the centralized banking system that we have. I mean, can you speak on that a little bit? Like,
Yes, I mean we have central banking and decentralized banking, right? Yeah. Look, so I mean that's why we call it the sovereign mint, right? It's there's the federal mint which prints dollars, and there's the sovereign mint which uses Bitcoin to create Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, Bitcoin-backed dollars. The challenge of building sovereign has been immense, because the amount of things that sovereign has taken on, the scope of the challenge is I can't really think of another project that has tried to do that. We basically had to, because there was nothing else, we had to go out and build everything, right? The whole ecosystem.
yeah.
And we've helped to grow the ecosystem. So some other projects, like Babelfish and Tropicus and the Guild and Money on Chain, either have been growing around Sovereign or in partnership with Sovereign, but we've done all of that. We've achieved a level of scale, and we've done it without having our own platform, right? There's no, usually you would expect to have your own platform if you're going to be building out the ecosystem,
Yeah.
and without sort of having raised substantial capital first, right? This started as a grassroots project and raised a good amount of money through various by voting to allow people to acquire tokens, but nothing on the order of projects that have tried to do things of similar scope. And so I think what the sort of people who have been building on Sovereign and what the Sovereign community have helped to birth by talking about it, by using it, by engaging with it, or by contributing to it, is remarkable and quite singular. And we still consider ourselves to be just in alpha phase. So our overall sense is, so we have like a roadmap of where we want to go, high level as a community.
I'd love to share that with everyone here.
Yeah. So step one is where we set out to do and where we feel like we've established sort of success. Step one was create an ecosystem, create the leading ecosystem of DeFi for Bitcoin. Start giving people the ability to use Bitcoin without going through an intermediary. Demonstrate there is demand for that and create a community around it. That we've done.
Yes.
Phase two, and this is where we're moving towards now, is build a trustless platform for smart contracts built on Bitcoin. And so where we want to go next is we want to create a platform which is going to allow people to use Bitcoin in a completely trustless manner and build the technology to build anything on Bitcoin. And
wow.
Phase three, and this is like the end game, right? Phase three is to build a true parallel economy on Bitcoin.
Super.
And that's sorry, what?
We're talking the same language right now, yeah.
So we're trying to, that's a very big, it's maybe a multi-decade roadmap, right? But we've tried to chunk it up, and the project is like 2.5 years old now, and we've managed to establish a community. We've managed to establish DeFi ecosystem. What we now need to do is we need to build out the platform, and some of the technologies to do that are very are getting pretty advanced, right? To the point that we're reaching a point now that I think we'll be able to start delivering to the world and to a lot of people the ability to do them. And it's not just us. A lot of people have been bitten by this bug, right? The idea of building rollups on Bitcoin, I think is going to be a very, very big story. And we want to push that forward. And then the second piece of that is cryptographically trustless peg, the ability to move Bitcoin and to transact with Bitcoin trustlessly without ever having, without wrapping it, so to speak, using a federation or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a bigger challenge, and probably going to take longer. But I believe that it is possible to do with rapidly maturing cryptography that we have today, without making any changes to Bitcoin core code.
Wow, that is a big statement. I really hope you're right about that.
Well, we have some views on how it would be done, and what we would like to see with the Bitcoin Renaissance and with Sovereign playing a role in that, is that in the same way that Ethereum, because of its scaling issues, sort of drove forward, like massively accelerated the maturation of zero knowledge proofs. I believe that there's another sort of cousin to zero knowledge cryptography, which is witness encryption cryptography, which we, by building a Bitcoin focused ecosystem, are going to accelerate the maturation of witness encryption cryptography, and that is going to allow us in, I don't know if it's 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, but it's going to allow us quite soon to have fully trustless Bitcoin bridges.
Wow, that is exciting. So, all right, so let's take a quick snapshot. So you guys, 3 steps. The first step you guys have achieved, which is building a community around Sovereign, right? The second step I would describe is, it's not just smart contracts, but just building all the tools so you can build level 3, which is like a full-on sustainable Bitcoin economy. Right?
Well, what we would like to do is we would like to build, so, in Aurora's manifesto, she said, I invite you to join us, but more so, I invite you to compete with us. right? So we want to, first of all, create an environment where people see something successful and come and compete with us. But also, we've built out a trading platform, and we've built out lending platforms, but we think they suck. And what do I mean by they suck? I mean, we can imagine a million ways in which they could be better, right? We would like to see people come and have an environment in which they come and they build better versions of these things. And so this is why we would like to create a platform. And we started building out SDK things, but we actually want to create the roll-ups where people can come and start building. And so, if people are interested in building on Bitcoin, they should feel free to reach out to me, because I think there's what's coming over the coming months and year is going to be a sea change in the platforms and opportunities available to people building on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there are definitely early indicators of that in our Bitcoin Startup Lab, and what you just shared with the world today is also a precursor to that. This is really exciting. So, I'm thinking that we should even create a resource channel. This is a little tangent from the interview, but a resource channel in our Discord, so people could click into Sovereign, even get to your Discord server or whatever, right, and start building. Yeah, that'd be really fun. Oh man, this is exciting. This is exciting. Thanks so much for sharing all this. Okay, so we have the end game, and we know where you guys are today. And we also we're inviting people with ZK knowledge, witness encryption knowledge, basically people with deep cryptography knowledge to come over and help build the infrastructure, which will complete stage 2 to enable a fully sustainable Bitcoin economy for stage 3. I mean, it could take decades, but I think really the key is there's a sprint in the beginning. There's a sprint in the beginning that determines if a company goes big or just fizzles, right? And so I really think there's a call to action to invite more people to join the community, because with more people working on it, it accelerates. The velocity increases to the point where there could be an escape velocity, and it gets to the next level. Yeah. So if you guys are anyone who's listening to this, reach out to Yago. All right, he's one of the co-creators of Sovereign, and they're doing some incredible things. This is mind-boggling just thinking about the possibilities. All right, so I have some people here in the Twitter Spaces, because we have about 10 minutes left. Would you mind taking a couple questions if there's any questions? If not, I have a bunch of questions. I have a bunch of questions.
I'd be happy to.
All right, wonderful. So, all right, so I see some familiar faces in here. If you guys, I know I've seen these familiar faces. They're normally a bit shy, but they're very staunch followers, and they love hearing this. But if you guys decide you guys want to ask something, go ahead and ask it now. But while you guys are thinking about asking something, you just raise your hand as a speaker. I'll invite you up here. I have a question. One of the first times I came across Sovereign was when you guys announced the zero interest loan, right? Can you explain that to me, because I think that's so fascinating. I mean, I think more people.
Yeah. The concept is very simple, right? Bitcoin is a very valuable asset. You can lock up your Bitcoin, and the system will issue stable coins. In other words, there's no lender, there's only a borrower. In a way, you're borrowing from yourself. And the system will issue Bitcoin-backed stable coins to you on the basis of your loan. Now, why is there no interest? There's no interest because there's no lender. You're not paying interest to anyone. However, this is, like I was talking about, this is only one of multiple different methods of creating stability, because each method of creating stability, issuing these stable coins, is very successful under some market circumstances and not so successful as under others. So, for example, Zero is very, very successful. It's only been around for for about a year. But the first 6 months was very successful because we were in a relatively low interest rate environment. And so while there was a very, very big demand for using Zero, it was not there was not a situation where the demand completely outstripped supply. Now, if you have too many people who come and use Zero at once, then what happens is you have a lot of Bitcoin-backed dollars floating around, right? And so there needs to be demand for those Bitcoin-backed dollars. But if interest rates go very, very high, and there's a zero interest rate method, then this system becomes so attractive that a lot of money flows to it at once, and too many dollars are printed. And then what happens is that people start redeeming those dollars. They basically start turning in those dollars and asking for Bitcoin, because what keeps the dollar at a peg and what makes it different from other stablecoins is you can always go and hand it in for $1 worth of Bitcoin, which is a very simple and perfectly safe system of maintaining a peg. But what it does is it means that people who came in under an assumption that they would basically be holding on to their positions for very, very long periods of time started seeing that their Bitcoin was redeemed again. So they were not losing money, right? Because their debt was going down, but they were not maintaining the same Bitcoin position that they had imagined to. And so about a month ago, the sovereign community did something remarkable. After a very tumultuous debate, the decision was taken to substantially increase the origination fee, to make the origination fee so high to make the system unattractive. And the reason they chose to do this, well, I think there were many reasons, but one reason they chose to do this was because the system is still in alpha, and the users who came to use the system early on possibly didn't fully understand the risk that they were taking in terms of potentially having their funds being used in redemptions. And so in order to avoid exacerbating the situation for them, the sovereign community decided to temporarily reduce or effectively pause new issuance using Zero.
Yeah, because I would imagine with the increased interest rates, a bunch of people would want to play the arbitrage.
Exactly. Now, and so actually now it's a really, really opportune time. If somebody wants to come in and step in with a new way of issuing, like an additional way of issuing sovereign dollars, now there's like a lot of demand, pent-up demand. So this is actually a really good opportunity.
So let me ask you a question. So let's say I put in 1 Bitcoin. How much sovereign dollar do I get back? Just, is it the market rate?
No, you have to choose a collateralization ratio.
Okay.
So the minimum collateralization ratio you can choose when you are creating the position is 150%. So like, let's say you put in $150 worth of Bitcoin, you could get $100.
Okay.
But that system will allow you to go down all the way to $110 of Bitcoin, worth of Bitcoin for $100 outstanding.
Oh, wow. So you can take, then that's a pretty high like stomach for risk then, like 110 to 100.
That's correct.
Okay. Then I can also be like very like risk averse and say, I'll put in 150 Bitcoin and I'll just take 15 out or something.
Correct. Currently, the system as a whole in aggregate has a collateralization ratio of over 300%. So most positions are much more conservative.
Yeah, so with 300%, that's like 1/3 basically, about 1/3.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty safe. I mean, even by the most like pessimistic people, I mean, even if Bitcoin drops by half, right, which is like pretty big drop, but that then they still keep their Bitcoin. Okay, and then so that's the beauty of it, right? Is this like they just have to take on the risk of the market fluctuation, but then you can, if you make your collateralization ratio low enough, then you're that's your insurance. And then if I remember correctly, there's like no timeline on when you have to return the money.
That's correct.
That's okay. That's very cool. All right. So guys, if you guys want to check out a zero interest loan system, go to Sovereign. I think it's pretty interesting. Thanks for making that. It's definitely a long overdue. Okay, so we're actually okay. There is actually one person here that like you must have done a good talk, because normally Paul does not ask any questions. I know Paul. He's part of our current cohort. Really great guy. Hi Paul. Paul, you can mute yourself. You're up here as a speaker now. We only have like 5 minutes left. You could take yourself off mute. Hi Paul. Go ahead and ask your question. Are you saying something, Paul? Okay. So I can't hear him. Can you hear him on your end? No. Okay. Paul, maybe you could text the question in the chat, and then I could read it here to Yago. Okay. Okay. Add a speaker. All right. So Paul, you dropped off a speaker, and now you're back on. Go ahead.
Hello, guys.
Oh, hello.
I was rugged. I
Rugged.
didn't hear you. Yeah, Hayden, thank you for conversation. That's amazing. I would love to ask you. You've mentioned that you're open for competitors, and yeah, I would love to ask your opinion about ordinals. If you already told that, that's fine. I've connected a bit later. And the second question, what advice could you give to those who are trying to build borrowing, lending for ordinals? Thank you.
Got it. Okay. So I have a bit of a complicated relationship with ordinals. I would have preferred ordinals to never exist. And what I mean by that is I wish we had taken a different choice in the past as a community and had focused more on building technologies that would allow more functionality for Bitcoin to happen off-chain. We've become a little bit obsessed with on-chain. You know, side chains, drive chains, you know, layer twos, etc. And that's because I would like I like the idea of the Bitcoin main chain being relatively minimalist, and so in that respect, you know, I'm disappointed that ordinals had to happen in a way, but I'm very excited by the fact that they have, because they have been a shot in the arm in terms of the interest and excitement around innovating, and are a key star in the you know, Bitcoin Renaissance sky. So with regards to the second question around lending with ordinals, look, I'm sure there's going to be demand, but it's a very difficult thing to do, to provide loans on the basis of a non-fungible, highly volatile asset in an extremely volatile economy, right? That is not what I would usually describe as the best collateral. And it's hard to assess what the value of that collateral is. That said, you know, there's going to be demand and to borrow, and likely there'll be demand to lend if the interest rates are high enough. I hope, Paul, that you're building this in a way that doesn't require intermediaries, and or if whatever it is that you're building, and I would invite you to you know, see if there's a way to build it with Sovereign, you know, using Sovereign's tooling or whatever.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes,
Paul, do you have a follow-up question?
in terms of the question, should they exist or not? For now, it's mostly art, but I can see real utility in this. For example, borrowing could be easily turned to renting, and I can give you easily two options. The first one is borrowing or renting space in the metaverse, and the second one is real rental. So to rent apartments, houses, buildings, which could be ordinals. I think that's one of the ways where we can find mass adoption.
Yeah, I think that you could experiment with both of those, right? Well, I mean,
Definitely.
what are some of the advantages on Sovereign? Because you already have lending, borrowing, you have a stable coin.
We have you could plug into the lending pools, and there's already an audience of existing lenders, an audience of existing borrowers, and cherry on the top, you get to do it with Bitcoin-backed stablecoins.
Boom. That is a big cherry on top. That's even bigger than the ice cream sundae.
I usually like the cherry the most.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, me too. Great question, Paul. Yep.
One small follow-up question.
Yep.
Regarding the learning resources. Where could we learn about borrowing and lending, the protocols? I mean, the documentation.
There's
yeah, go ahead. You first.
Sovereign Wiki might be the best place to read about it, but the best place to just see it is the GitHub. Everything's open source, so you can just take a look.
And Paul, we're going to, this is like some alpha. We're going to get all the information, put in our Discord server, so it's easy access for you. Okay, so you don't have to run around.
Thank you
for it. Okay. Great. So unfortunately, guys, I would love to keep going, but we are on time. But thank you for being a great audience. And again, thank you, Iago, for sharing your founder origin story. We're hoping, again, that this will bring more builders onto Bitcoin and also more builders onto Sovereign. And so, guys, stay tuned. Keep track of BTC Startup Lab on Twitter. You could join the Olympics if you want to build something cool. You can also use Sovereign, right? We have an agnostic prize of $50,000. That doesn't matter what technology you use, as long as you're building on Bitcoin, including Sovereign, you can access that prize pool. You could compete in it, right? So that's the Bitcoin Olympics. But if you're like in it to win it and you want to just go the full 9 yards and create an awesome product on Bitcoin, join the Bitcoin Startup Lab. Again, it's at BTC Startup Lab is our Twitter symbol. And again, thank you so much, Iago. It's an honor to have you as a top 30 innovators in Bitcoin 2023. And with that said, it's a wrap for today and looking forward to next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.